Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, October 3rd, 2017. My name is Edna Sussman. I'm a reference librarian here at the Half Hollow Hills Community Library. We're interviewing Henry DeBonis, an Army veteran from World War II, as part of our Veterans Testimonial Project and in collaboration with the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project. Thank you so much, Henry, for being here today and for your service to our country and participating in our project.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for asking me to come. I'll be just too happy to give my experiences.
Thank you, thank you. That's very, very important to us. Henry, where and when were you born?
I was born in Union City, New Jersey, January 11, 1928.
And who were your parents and what were their occupations and names?
My father's name was Benjamin DeBonis. He was a sort of a carpenter. He had his own business. He was an immigrant from Italy. And my mother was just a housemaker. She was an immigrant from Italy also.
Oh, did they meet in Italy?
They met here in America.
Really? And did you have any siblings?
I have a brother and 3 sisters. I have a brother who was also in World War II. He became a bomber pilot with an officer's rank.
Wow. And what were your siblings' names?
My older sister named Olga. I have a twin sister named Inez and a younger sister named Edna.
Oh, nice. And what was your brother's name?
His name was Lucian DeBonis.
Okay. And so he served in which branch?
He served the United States Army Air Corps.
Okay.
And he was stationed in the Pacific in World War II.
Were you both in at the same time?
We were both in at the same time, but he went in like 3 years before me.
I see.
He was 3 years older than I am.
Uh-huh.
And he went in for pilot training, and during his training, they decided to make him a bombardier because they had an excessive number of pilots. Mm-hmm. They didn't have enough bombardiers, so they said they're going to make him a bombardier. Wow. With the rank of 2nd lieutenant. So he went for training as a bombardier and served in the Pacific in World War II.
Mm-hmm. How long was he in till the end of the war? Or?
He went in early in 1943, and he was discharged, I think, in the summer of 1947.
Oh, near when you left the service?
I was in the service before he was discharged. So we were both in the service at the same time, exact same time.
And you were both discharged around the same time?
No, he was discharged about 7 or 8 months before, about 7 months before me.
I see. Now, what were you doing before you entered the service?
Before I just graduated high school, and I was supposed to have been drafted on the very last day of the wartime draft law. When the wartime draft law was enacted in 1940, it was supposed to have ended in May 15, 1946. On May 1946, I was sent to 39 Whitehall Street. That's an address that every serviceman knows, because that's where they go to be inducted. So on the very last day of the wartime draft law, I went to 39 Whitehall Street in Lower Manhattan to be inducted.
Wait, were you drafted then?
I was supposed to have been drafted.
Uh-huh.
Now, when I went down to be inducted, me and several hundred other men, we were told that if the Congress does not reenact the wartime draft law, that the draft law would be terminated and everybody can go home, nobody would be drafted. So we waited for about an hour, and the authorities came in to tell us that the Congress did not extend the wartime draft law. Oh. Everybody was to go home, except me. Oh. I decided I wanted to go into the Army. Oh. So I enlisted. So they sent me to a room, and a lieutenant inducted me into the United States Army, all by myself.
Wow, that's amazing. You really wanted to join.
I'm an enlistee.
You really wanted to join.
Yes, definitely want to go into the Army.
Why did you pick that branch, the Army?
They picked it for me.
Oh, because
when you get drafted, you generally go into the Army. At times, if they don't have enough Marines, they would draft you into the Marines or the Navy. But 9 out of 10 men were drafted into the Army.
Oh, because the process had kind of started, you figured Army.
Yes.
They already were picking you for the Army, I see. So you wanted to continue with that.
I wanted to be a United States Marine. I fashioned myself invading the beaches in World War II, but it was not to be. They did not place me into the Marine Corps or the Navy. I was placed into the United States Army.
Well, so then, after you were inducted, what happened to you when you departed for training camp?
Okay, the first place I went to was Fort Dix, Kentucky. And that's from Fort Dix, Kentucky, that's when they place everybody in different camps, in different outposts for their training. Most of the men went to infantry training. I was sent to the Army Tank School in Fort Knox, Kentucky, to take my training in the Tank Corps.
Wow.
Okay, so I took my training in Tank Corps. Once I finished, I was expected to go into some armored division, which is a Tank Corps. Instead, they sent me as an occupation troop to Japan, trained me as a military policeman, and sent me to Sagamo Prison, which housed all the Japanese war criminals.
Oh, wow. Wow.
In that prison was housed the top Japanese military and political officials, including Hideki Tojo. Now, when I mention Hideki Tojo to many people, nobody heard of him, but everybody heard of Adolf Hitler. Hideki Tojo was the, you might say, the opposite number, or the Hitler of Japan. He was the prime minister, Tojo. He was the one that gave the order to attack Pearl Harbor.
Really?
And all the other outposts in Japan.
Wow. And he was in that prison?
Hideki Tojo was in that prison, and I was one of his guards.
Oh, my God. That's unbelievable. Wow.
Along with several other men. If you recall the Bataan Death March, did you ever hear of the Bataan Death
I've
March?
heard of it, yes.
Okay.
But go ahead and explain. It's good.
The Bataan Death March was as follows. Bataan was an island next to the island of Corregidor in the Philippine Islands. Soon, as the World War II began, the Japanese invaded the Philippine Islands. General Douglas MacArthur was stationed in the Philippine Islands. He fought the Japanese. Because it was the early part of the war, the troops in the Philippine Islands could not be, they could not be sent ammunition. They could not be supplied. We did not have the ship to supply them because in the early days of the war, there was a lot of chaos and pandemonium. Where should the troops go? Who should get the priority in ammunition and planes? So MacArthur fought on the island of Corregidor. The Japanese had severely beaten the Americans because we ran short of ammunition. We're not able to continue the war anymore. So we were given the order to surrender. But MacArthur was told by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt that he is here to abandon the Philippine Islands because we needed his expertise. So MacArthur was then flown to, I believe, Australia, where he was to gather an army to fight the Pacific War. The men that were left was under General Wainwright. General Wainwright ran out of ammunition, could not continue the war, and surrendered. There were several thousand, can't remember the number, but the number was in the tens of thousands of men, together with Filipino troops. They surrendered. Now, they surrendered on the island of Bataan and Corregidor. Now, there was a prison camp about 120 miles north in the Philippine Islands. They made these men march in searing heat without food and very little water to march to the camp 120 miles away. Many of these men dropped dead from lack of water and food. And those that did fall down because they were too tired, they couldn't make it, they were bayoneted.
Oh, my God.
And this was known, the Japanese were cruel to the Americans.
Terrible.
This was known as the Bataan Death March. When the American public heard about it, they were incensed. And we wanted to really defeat the Japanese and punish them for what they did to our troops. Now, the main...
You were there then at the time?
Oh, no, this was right at the beginning of the war.
Oh, I see.
I went right after the war.
Right.
One of the main general who was in charge of the Philippine operations for the Japanese army, his name was General Matsushita. I remember his name. After the war, when MacArthur invaded the Philippines, recaptured the Philippines from the Japanese, MacArthur captured General Matusha and asked him personally, why did you allow the Bataan Death March? Matusha's answer was, well, I told my men to treat them humanely. They were not treated humanely in violation of the Geneva War Convention, in which all enemy prisoners were to be treated humanely. They were not treated humanely.
Terrible.
Okay.
Wow.
So MacArthur had this man tried in front of in the prison camp. He was found guilty and executed. He was hung. Matusha was hung because of his neglect for what he did, allowed what happened to the American troops and the Filipinos.
And you were there when that happened?
General Matusha was executed in the Philippines. He was not in
Oh.
Sagamo prison.
Oh,
His trial took place in the Philippine Islands.
but before the trial, he was at the prison where you were?
He was not at the prison. He never left the Philippines.
Oh,
He stayed in the Philippines,
oh, I see.
okay, as the occupying general.
Okay.
After the war, MacArthur successfully defeated the Japanese army in the Philippines. MacArthur had him tried. He was found guilty and executed by hanging,
Wow.
along with many other Japanese troops who bayoneted and killed our men
Awful.
in violation of the Geneva Convention.
Right, right. Now, if we could just go back a second to your basic training.
Yes.
You were trained for the tank
I
corps.
was trained for the tank corps.
And what was that supposed to be? Actually driving tanks and,
Well, when you're a tankman, you get trained in every aspect of tank warfare. You learn how to drive the tank. You learn how to operate the radio, and you learn how to rate the cannon on the turret. So you're trained in all facets of tank warfare.
and why did they train you and then put you in a totally unrelated?
That is the big question I still, to this day, cannot understand. Why I was trained as a tankman, yet they made me a military policeman and made me a prison guard and jailer.
Well, maybe the war was winding down and they didn't need tank men.
Perhaps not.
So how, do you recall any of your instructors in basic training? What were they like?
My instructors, we had a bunch of sergeants. Everybody hates sergeants. They were tough on us and crude. But I understand they have to be that way because they have to toughen you up.
Oh, I see.
See?
Huh.
And we had to be very well disciplined. A disciplined army wins wars. Undisciplined army loses battles.
That's a good point. How was it adapting to military life, like the regime, physical regimen and the food and barracks, social life?
Okay, in Japan, we had a club. At the prison, we had a prison club. Of course, the officers always are separate from the enlisted men. They had their own club. Officers are not supposed to engage with enlisted men. You cannot get too comey with them, too friendly with them.
Oh.
Then you lose respect for the officers. Officers do not want to lose respect. They want to be known as tough guys, always following orders. You must follow their orders. And when they give orders, they shout them at you. Very stern, because that's what makes a disciplined army. You must follow orders. That's the only way you can win battle, is follow orders.
So how did you feel in the barracks and with the other, how did you live there in Japan?
Okay, the barracks we called Quonset huts because they were rounded, they were oval shaped, and there was about 24 men in each Quonset hut. We're all part of the prison complex. We were all guards or jailers, and we all got along very well for the most part. There were a few struggles, a few fights, which I myself got into one.
Really?
Yes,
You came out
we
okay?
always get into fights.
Oh, okay.
Always having disagreements, and people push each other around, and ends in fist fights.
What island were you on in Japan?
The main island. There were two main islands. The island Hokkaido and Honshu. I think Honshu was the main island. Okay.
And it was a pretty big base where you were, jail?
Well, the prison was not a big base, no. It's just a prison compound.
I see.
We had about close to 500 men assigned to the prison.
Americans?
All Americans. They had various duties as jailers. Some were cooks, some were guards. I was a prison guard and sometimes jailer. The difference between a prison guard and a jailer is a guard usually wears a helmet with the words MP on it, carries a rifle with him, and stands guard upon a post outside the prison wall or on top of the prison wall.
I see.
A jailer is one who does not wear a helmet, is not armed. You cannot be armed inside a prison because you're dealing with prisoners. They can disarm you and shoot their way out of prison.
What if protecting yourself if there's a fight between the prisoners or something? How do you
Okay.
protect yourself?
Among the prisoners, let me tell you about the Japanese prison. You talk about a disciplined army. I have never seen a disciplined army the way the Japanese was. Far better disciplined than the American army was.
Really?
There were no fights among Japanese prisoners. In fact, the Japanese prisoners were very respectful to Americans. I heard that they deeply respect a winning army. The Americans were the winning army. They respected us all the time. Every time they came to us, they bowed,
Oh, wow.
which is the Japanese tradition of bowing to a superior. And they spoke to us very respectfully. There were no fights, nothing. But one thing I can say in the barracks, in the prison, Japanese prisoners, many of them tried to commit suicide. They called it harikiri.
Oh, yeah.
See, harikiri is suicide. When you commit suicide, that's supposed to be an honorable thing. It means you did not surrender. Now, many of the prisoners attempted harikiri. None of them succeeded because all the jailers were on duty. They were very, what's the word?
Vigilant.
Exactly. They were
Okay.
very vigilant. The doors to the prison were always open. Never locked, always open to the prisoners. We never had to fear the prisoners because they always stayed in their rooms. See? Like I said, they deeply respected the Americans.
I had never heard any of this description before. Very interesting.
So if any of them tried to commit suicide, you would run right in, the doors are open, and cut them down. Now, you wonder, how did they commit suicide?
Right.
They tried to hang themselves. Here's what they did. Japanese prisoners got toilet paper, always issued toilet paper, because in the rooms they had a little bathroom, a little toilet. They're always given toilet paper. They used to get the very thin toilet paper, roll it up very fine, make a rope out of it. It would be as tight as a rope. And they'll hang them, put the rope, the toilet paper wrapped around each other, hang themselves with it from the ceiling, and try to commit suicide. None of them ever succeeded, okay, because of our vigilance.
You kept watch. But
Kept watch
I don't
all the
understand.
time.
How does even toilet paper wound tightly, that creates a strong rope?
It's as strong as rope, believe me. It can support a 150-pound man.
Unbelievable.
We saw it.
Wow.
We saw them with the toilet paper wrapped very tightly around, very finely and tightly. And they made a rope out of it, which is very strong.
Wow.
Like I said, it can support a 150-pound man.
That's amazing. It's amazing. So,
May I tell you an experience what happened to me?
sure.
Every week, the Japanese go to a common bathing place to
What,
be
bathe?
bathed.
Oh.
To be bathed. The Japanese do not have single bathtubs the way we do, and in privacy. They have large bathtubs where 10 or 12 men can get in at the same time and bathe themselves. They have public bathing facilities in Japan,
Oh,
where all people get, including the women, get in with the men. Believe it or
really?
not.
To
Yeah.
wash themselves?
To wash themselves, to bathe themselves.
Do you think it's still like that?
I'm not sure. Could possibly be.
But it was like that when
I
you
don't
were
think
there.
their culture changed. Yes, it was that way when I was there.
That's interesting.
Okay, one day when I was guarding Japanese prison, I was a jailer at the time. One of the prisoners was given a cup to drink water. When the cup was returned to me, we have to be given back all the cups. A little piece of the cup was missing.
What was it made out of?
With a glass.
Ah,
Okay. When I turned the cups into my superior, he said, look, a piece is missing. Where's that piece? I said, I don't know. I had to go, he ordered me to go back to the common bathing area and look for that piece. Why? Because the Japanese would use that piece to slit their throats or slit their wrists to commit suicide.
Oh, my God.
Yes. So I went back into the common bathhouse looking for that little piece of sliver. I could not find it. So I had to go back to the Jap who gave me the cup. I had to have him undress. Totally undressed. I had to search all his clothes. Now this is the thing. They don't sleep in beds. They sleep on mats, very thick mats on the floor made of straw. Okay? So I was thinking my superior officer may want me to look in that mat for that piece of sliver of glass. And that was my fear because I could not find that in that mat. They could really have it hidden somewhere.
Sure.
But he said, okay, I'm going to let it go this time. But next time you're given a cup or a glass, make sure it is intact, not cracked or broken in pieces.
So you never found it?
Never found it. And the man never committed suicide, attempted to commit suicide because we watched him closely.
Wow. Now, are these all relatively young soldiers that you were guarding? I mean...
Most of them were young soldiers. Yeah, soldiers are generally young.
Yeah.
You can't have old men in the field.
Right.
They're the ones that become the officers. Yes, we did have some old men. They were the officers, higher-ranking officers. We had a lot of politicians. The Secretary of State, his name was Togo. He was one of the prisoners also. A lot of the Japanese politicians, they were prisoners, okay? Because they're the ones who, together with Chojo, had decided to war against America.
Oh, I see.
So they were declared war criminals, and they were tried. And they were sent to the trials in Tokyo each day. That a bus would pick them up to the trials in Tokyo. Back in 1948, most of them, I think all of them were found guilty, and most of them were hung, including Hideki Tojo. He was Hitler's counterpart in Japan.
Right. Well, what happened to them once they were found guilty?
Well, once they were found guilty, they were tried and they were sentenced. They were sentenced to be hung until they were dead. And they had a gallows in Sagama prison where all these men were sent to be hung. Now, we treated them very, very humanely. Japanese, when our men were prisoners in Japan and in a lot of the islands which the Japanese has controlled, they starved our men. A lot of men died of starvation. Now, when I was in Sagamo prison, feeding the Japanese, you cannot believe the amount of food they were given to eat. We had, in each cell block, there must have been about 150 prisoners.
Wow.
We would fill 3 or 4 barrels of rice, which is their main staple. We were giving them rice, plenty of rice to eat all they wanted. They can come up for seconds. And they were given like a soup. The soup that they liked was made out of, it was a fish soup with chunks of fish in it. They would get this soup with the chunk of fish and pour it over their rice. And they were given as much tea as they wanted and little cakes at each meal.
Wow.
And we allowed them to be issued what we call Japanese tins. They were like, it was like a mess kit, where they could take all the surplus rice, put it in their mess kit, and bring it back to their cells in case they wanted to eat it between meals.
Oh.
So they were really very well fed, as opposed to starvation that they gave to our prisoners.
Wow.
Also, we allowed them to have Shinto priests come in to perform services for them. We even had Catholic priests. Some of the Japanese priests were Catholic.
Oh.
We had priests, Japanese priests come in to say Mass and hear their confession.
Wow.
That's how well they were treated as opposed to terrible treatment afforded to our prisoners.
Wow. Well, that's...
And the Japanese prisoners, they were very, very grateful to the way we treated them.
Really?
Yes, as opposed to the way they treated our men.
Oh, very interesting. Wow. So your entire service was pretty much there, spent in Japan at the prison?
So say it
Your
again.
entire service, you were in for about a year and a half?
Yeah, I was there
spent
for 1 full year.
Okay, was
in the
spent
prison.
there in the prison?
In the prison, I was in the prison for 1 full year.
Did other American soldiers like yourself, were they also stationed with you so that you were together with
All
others?
the personnel were American military personnel. Now, in this prison, we also had an Italian prisoner and some German prisoners.
Oh,
Because if you recall, Germany and Italy were allied with Japan.
right.
They were called the Axis powers. So some of the German prisoners that were stationed in Japan, they were taken prisoners too. They were at Sagamo prison, and one Italian prisoner was there. We even had members, there was a Dutch prisoner there too. Now, it was a puzzle as to why there was a Dutch prisoner there.
Wasn't the Dutch, weren't the Dutch on our side?
The Dutch were on our side, exactly. When Hitler went to war, he conquered Holland and Belgium. So why was there a Dutch prisoner? This I couldn't understand. But he worked for the Japanese, and that's why he was taken prisoner. But he did not serve in Japan for a long time, in prison for a long time. After 6 or 7 months, he was released back to Holland.
I see. Huh.
Because they were deemed to him not to be a war criminal as such, even though he worked for the Japanese. But he was investigated to see what part he played in the war against the Americans and the British. Now, there were British and other Filipino military personnel and civilian personnel that came to the prison because, excuse me, a lot of their men were taken prisoners by the Japanese and they were maltreated. British prisoners were maltreated, and so were the Filipinos. So they came to the prison to interview with the Japanese war criminals to find out what part they played in maltreating the British and Filipino prisoners, and Australian prisoners too.
Now, what I meant kind of was, were any of the American soldiers, they did their service like together with you? So did you establish friendships or camaraderie with your fellow soldiers?
Absolutely. I still have contact with people that served in prison with me.
Do you really?
Yes, American personnel. After all, when we were discharged, we went to see, we had, what do they call it, get-togethers at times, reunions.
Yes.
We did have reunions at times, but many of them are now dead. They passed away. So I don't see any of them anymore. And yes, there was a big camaraderie between all the American soldiers at the prison. We all got along very well, except for a few skiffs, a few little fights. There were small fights,
Yeah, good.
not much.
How did you stay in touch with family and friends from home?
We had contact with family by writing letters. See, we all wrote letters. I wrote home all the time.
You did?
I got letters from my family, and I wrote a letter to my brother when he was away stationed in the Pacific. I wrote to him. He wrote back to me of his experiences in flying missions, in the
Wow.
Pacific Ocean.
Nice.
So
Did you see him at all when you were
I
stationed?
never saw him. We never had furloughs together. So the next time I saw my brother was when I came back home to be discharged.
Oh, okay.
Right.
What did you do for recreation over there? I mean, was there a...
Well, we had a club. And at the club, we had the Japanese personnel coming in to entertain us. They had Japanese singers,
Oh,
and they had others to entertain the troops. We had a band there. A lot of men could play instruments. We had a band, and we were permitted to invite Japanese girls
oh,
to the club to dance with.
okay.
I myself never invited any Japanese girl. I had no girlfriends. But many of the military personnel had girlfriends. And there were several that married these girls.
Huh. Did they stay in Japan after they were discharged?
That, I am not sure what happened.
Huh.
Whether they stayed in Japan or they took their brides back to America with
Right.
them, I don't know.
Now, you enlisted after the official, after the bombing and the fighting stopped, right?
Yes, yes.
That's when you enlisted?
Yes, that's when I was of age. See, when the war ended, I was like 17 years and 8 months. You were drafted when you became 18. So I was drafted like 8 months after I enlisted 8 months after the war ended.
Right.
And that's when I went into the military, took my basic training, was shipped to Japan. When I was shipped to Japan, it's strange.
Wait, was that on a plane or a ship?
No, this is interesting.
Okay.
When I was shipped to Japan, believe it or not, I was not shipped out to the West Coast to take a boat to Japan. They sent me to Staten Island, New York. From there, I took a boat together with about 1,200 other men to take a boat to go to Japan. How did we get to Japan from New York City?
Yeah.
We went down the east coast of the United States, through the Panama Canal. We got to stop off at the Panama Canal for a brief 8 hours. We went through the locks, which was very interesting. See how the locks work.
Oh, nice.
See? Okay, then from the lock, we went over to San Pedro, California for a brief respite to take on more soldiers. From there, we went to Hawaii.
Okay.
And there we had a couple of days furlough in Hawaii, which is very interesting. We went to Waikiki Beach, and none of us had any bathing suits, so all of us, 1,200 soldiers, were bused to Waikiki Beach. It was a beautiful beach,
Really?
beautiful hotels. We all took our uniforms off, kept our underwear on, and 1,200 men went into the water.
Wow.
Remember, we were on that ship for about 20, 25 days.
Wow.
So it was a beautiful respite to go into say we can swim into Waikiki Beach,
Nice.
all in our underwear.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. So it must have been a huge ship.
It was a huge ship, yes. A troop ship.
Yeah.
It was a huge ship for 1,200 men, yes.
And did the same ship then with you all continue on after
Yes.
Hawaii?
The same ship was called the Colby Victory. It was named after Colby College in Maine.
Oh, yeah.
By strange coincidence, my brother went to Colby College.
Oh, you're kidding. That's funny.
So anyway, we were on that ship for 32 days.
Wow.
It was like a cruise.
Wow.
A 30-day cruise from Staten Island, New York, all the way through the Panama Canal, up the coast of California, to Hawaii, and to Yokohama, Japan. That's where we disembarked.
So from Hawaii, it was direct to Japan.
Directed to Japan, nonstop.
What was that ship like? You had barracks in there too, or how?
No, there were no barracks. You go below deck, and there are hammocks, one over the other, piled up, 3 high.
You're kidding.
Yeah, each one was boom, boom, boom.
Is
Each
big,
slept
big
in a
open
hammock.
space, big open space, and then hammocks?
Very little space.
I mean,
There was one above me and one above him.
but I mean the whole room where all the hammocks were.
All hammocks, but one large
Yeah.
room.
Wow. Did you
All
all
the
eat
hammocks.
together, or how did that work?
We all slept together in individual hammocks.
And then what about eating? Where did?
We all ate together. We ate in shifts because the kitchen was not that big to accommodate 1,200 troops. So we ate in shifts. I think it was 3 shifts. Okay. And there was a minister, a Protestant minister on board ship. He had services on Sunday because we were on that ship for about 3 or 4 Sundays. I think 4 Sundays.
What did you do during the day? Was there training or?
No training, we just sunned ourselves on board ship. That's all we did.
Okay.
32 days, it was a
It
cruise.
was like a cruise, yeah.
Exactly like a cruise. All we did was sleep, eat, and hang out.
Wow. When it became time for you to finish your service there at the prison, did they give you the option to re-up, or did you want to leave, or?
Oh, yes. There was a shortage of prison personnel. And they asked if anybody wanted to stay on, they would increase their rank. They would promote them. I wanted to go home
Oh, okay,
because I had a GI Bill. I wanted to go to college.
okay.
So when my enlistment term was up, they sent me to what they call a replacement depot. I stayed there for about 2 weeks.
Where was that?
That was in Yokosuka, Japan. Okay. In Yokosuka, we had thousands of troops there. Okay. To take broad shifts. As soon as a ship came in, about 1,000 troops would go on board that ship to travel back to the States.
Ah.
Now, one interesting thing, when I was in Japan, when I first got to Japan, they had about 2,000 men sitting in a field, and your names would be called out. Who would go to, they were assigned to different infantry divisions. They had the 24th Infantry, the 25th Infantry, the 11th Airborne, and the 8th Army. And each day we would go to listen to our names, and each day hundreds and hundreds of troops would be called to go to either 24th or the 25th Infantry divisions. I was named for my name to be called to be one of the 100. About a week later, they called 7 names out. Mine was one of the 7 names. They said, you 7 men report to a particular barracks. You're going to specialized training.
Oh,
So my name was called one of the 7. So we went to this particular barracks, and in there was a major, and he said, you men, you're going to Sagamo prison. The first thing we thought, what did we do wrong?
that's funny.
We're going to Sagamo, we're prisoners of war? There were MPs all around us, and we thought we were going to be arrested. So we asked him, why are we going to Sagamo prisoners? What happened? He says, no, don't worry. You're going to be assigned that you're going to be MPs the way these other men you see around you are MPs.
Wow. Were you relieved, or how did you feel about that?
Relieved.
Yeah.
You're going to Sagamo prison. What?
Wow.
What did we do wrong?
Wait, did they train you to be MPs then?
You were given a brief training, maybe no more than a week.
Okay.
How to handle ourselves, how to handle prisoners, and so forth. How to conduct ourselves in the prison, how to conduct yourself with the Japanese prisoners, and so forth. And that's the training we were given.
What about, you said sometimes you were a guard outside?
Yes. You
Did
see,
that
sometimes we had guard duty.
Right.
We would put on these white helmets with the word MP on the large letters, MP, in red big letters, MP. And we carried rifles, loaded rifles. When you were on guard duty, I could see outside the prison, on the station, on the prison wall, okay, they had big huts on there. That's when you had guard duty. When you had jail duty, you were inside the prison. No helmets, no arms. You couldn't, like I said, you could not be armed. They were afraid that the Japanese prisoners would take the arms away from you.
Right.
Inasmuch as the cell doors were open, they could come outside in the cell and disarm you.
Right.
So nobody was to have arms in the prison.
Was the training a little different from being a guard as being a MP?
Not generally, no.
Well, you had learned how to handle a gun from basic training,
Oh,
probably.
yes, we learned
Yeah.
basic training. We also learned how to gun when I was an MP at the prison.
Right.
We always went for target practice
Oh,
at
you
times.
did? Okay.
Yeah, well, everybody did. Because you had to be aware of the gun, you had to always be trained in the use of the rifles and other arms. Like we had a sidearm, a 45, a Colt 45, okay?
You were allowed to carry that?
Yes, we're allowed to carry that too also, and the carbine. Okay. Yes, we always also had to be trained, well armed in the firing of the gun, always.
So now, when 1947 comes around and you're ready to leave, did you get shipped back via boat, or?
Yes. We all had to wait. As I said, we went to this replacement depot in Yokosuka, Japan. And there we waited for ships to come in. Every time a ship come in, several hundred or 1,000 men would board ship. And I waited for my ship. It took me about week and a half or so for my ship to come in, for me to board. And we boarded this ship. It was called the General Langford. I don't remember the name of these ships. I went on the Kobe Victory to Japan, came back on the General Langford. And it was nonstop
Oh,
from Yokohama to California. I think it was San Francisco where we disembarked
okay.
in San Francisco.
And then?
And at San Francisco, we got some free time, and we went into the town at Frisco just to enjoy ourselves in
Yeah.
Frisco, see?
And then?
And then when our names were called to be discharged, We had to go to a certain barracks. There they gave us a couple of $100. They told us how to try to conduct yourselves. You're no longer soldiers. You're going back into civilian life. We wish you luck. And Godspeed and so forth. That's
This
what
was
they
in
told us.
California.
This was in California,
Now,
yes.
how did you get back to your
Okay,
home?
then what happened was a lot of us, buddies of mine, lived on the East Coast. Many of them were from New York City and New Jersey. And we all went to a train station together, bought our tickets to go to take a train back to New York City, to Penn Station,
Right.
or Grand Central Station, I forget which.
That's a pretty long ride from California
That's
to
right.
New York.
Oh, by the way, we did not take a train, I'm sorry. Many of the men took the train.
Okay.
I wanted to take a bus.
Oh, it's even longer.
Took 4 days by bus.
Why did you want to do that?
Why did I want to take a bus? I don't remember why. Maybe, of course, I think it was a little cheaper.
Oh, and you had to pay for your transportation back to New York?
We paid our trip, yes. Yes.
I would think the Army would have done that.
Well, they did give us several $100s. See? Had mustering out pay.
Oh,
So we had to pay our own way.
huh.
Some men took a plane. It cost them $150 to take the plane. They spent practically all their mustering pay to take a plane.
God.
So me, I think, and 7 other men decided to take the bus back. It wasn't that bad.
Wow, how
Sleeping
long did
on the
that
bus.
take? How long did that take?
It took a full 4 days.
It's
4
not
days.
too bad.
And the bus, the bus was always moving. See? The only time the bus stopped was to change drivers.
Oh, okay.
See?
You always stayed on the same bus.
Same bus.
So how were you received by your family and friends when you got home?
Okay, when I got home
This was in New York then?
in New York, when I came home, I got off at the bus depot in 42nd Street near Times Square. Now, I never called my family up.
They didn't know you were coming home?
They knew I was coming home because when I got to California, I called up my family.
Oh, I see.
I said, I'll be home in about 4 days after I get discharged, okay? So then before I left wait a minute. It was Fort Lawton. That's where it was. I was stationed in Fort Lawton.
Where is that?
That was not, I'm sorry, it was not in California. It was in Washington, the state of Washington, by Seattle. That's what it was, not Frisco.
After
Sorry.
you left, they shipped you out of Japan to there?
Yes, we went directly to Fort Lawton,
Okay,
Washington. That's where, not Frisco. Sorry, I missed
that's
that.
all right.
Yes,
So that's where you
Fort
left
Lawton.
from there by bus?
And yes, we took a bus in Seattle because Fort Lawton was right outside of Seattle.
Okay.
Seattle, Washington, nice city, Seattle. Okay, that's where it was. Why I said Frisco, I got mixed up.
That's okay.
It's when I got to going there that I went to California, not coming back. Okay, so I called my family up from Fort Lawton and said, I'm on my way home. Good. I said I'd be home by, I think, Friday or something. But I did not get home as when I thought I would be home, see? So when I came home, I got off the Penn Station, I took the subway train back home. When I came home, I knocked on my door, it was locked, no answer.
Oh,
Nobody was home.
oh, jeez. How long did you have to wait till someone got home?
So what happened was, one of my neighbors, my next door neighbor, how'd they get home? What happened? I don't remember how I got into the house. Oh, I know.
Was this the house where your parents lived?
Okay,
And-
here's what happened. The door was locked. I couldn't get in. Now, my father had his own little business nearby. So I found out where his business was. So I went to his shop.
Oh,
I said, Dad, here I am, I'm home. He was shocked to see me. He closed the store up right away, took me home. He had the key to the door, so I came home. He opened up the door, that's what it was.
no. What was his shop for? What kind of store?
He made picture frames. You see these picture frames you see on the wall?
Yeah.
they're far more fancy than them. They're rose petals.
Oh.
He made those rose petals. He molded rose petals into those picture frames.
Wow.
See, that's what he did.
So your family and friends were thrilled to have you home.
They were thrilled. So when I got home, just my father and I went home, and one by one, my brother came home, my sisters came. They were shocked to see me.
Your brother had already gotten home.
He was discharged like 7 months before.
Right.
Because if he had a uniform, I would have had to salute him because he was an officer.
That's funny. So what did you do after you got home? Did you
Okay.
work or what happened?
When I got home, my brother had gotten a job, and he was going to get married very shortly. Okay, and my two sisters were getting married. They all waited for me to come home to get married.
Nice.
So when I got home, my brother got himself married 2 months, I think about a month and a half later. Now, he got me a job in Manhattan. It was called CARE. It was a relief agency. CARE, C-A-R-E, it was called Cooperative for American Remittances to Europe. If you recall, after World War II, Europe was on its back. They were economically depleted in an economic recession and depression. Everything was destroyed there. So they needed a lot of foodstuffs. So CARE sent them a lot of food packages from donations. See? So I worked for CARE for a short time. My brother went to college. Soon after I went to college too.
Where'd you go?
I went to Brooklyn College in Brooklyn. And then I went to Pratt Institute for an engineering course.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I majored in engineering. So after school, I got a job. Well, I got a job in an engineering company. See? And so did my brother. He had gotten an engineering degree himself.
Oh.
And he worked for a different company. And he got married, and my two sisters got married. And my younger sister named that, she got married later on. Then I got married about 4 years later to my wife. Okay? In fact, my wedding anniversary was just yesterday.
Which one?
Wedding anniversary was
anniversary.
yesterday. 63 years.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow, fantastic. How did you meet?
I met at a church dance. My wife was engaged to a soldier who was stationed in Japan. I mean, in Germany.
Oh, wow.
It was strange.
Yeah.
This is for the books. One of her girlfriends wanted to meet a certain young man that she knew would be coming to this dance. Now, I was with this young man. See? We were together. So when my wife's girlfriend talked her into going to this dance, she did not want to go. She says, "Why do I want to go dance? I'm engaged to my soldier boyfriend in Japan." So she went along with him because the girlfriend talked her into it. So she went with her girlfriend to this dance. My friend saw this girl who was interested in him. He said, "Look, there's Betsy. Let's go meet Betsy." Betsy was with another young lady. This young lady was the girl I met. Because my friend Tommy saw Betsy. They went dancing together. I was left alone with this young lady. Her name was Diana. So I asked Diana to dance. And we danced the whole night right to the altar.
Nice. How long after that did you get married?
I think 2 years later.
Okay, nice.
She fell in love with me. I fell in love with her.
Very nice.
She gave me her phone number right away. And I kept calling her. We kept dating. We expressed our love for one another, and we made plans to marry.
Very nice.
And she wrote her soldier boyfriend. She sent the ring back to him.
Broke his
He was
heart.
heartbroken.
Yeah, I bet.
When he came back from Germany, he went to see her.
Yeah.
And she told him, "It's off.
Oh,
I fell in love with this man."
wow. Did you have children?
We have 4
Four
children.
children. Nice.
Yes. All wonderful children.
Wonderful. So, so you stayed with the engineering firm?
Yeah, I worked always engineering firm.
Always engineering.
My last firm was with Grumman Aerospace.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
They laid me off on my 64th birthday. Well, I was going to retire in a year
Oh,
anyway.
you were?
So I decided to move my retirement up a year.
Okay.
But when you're in the engineering, when you work for the Defense Department, they work on contracts. If the company has a contract, you got a job. When the contract ended and no contract was forthcoming, you got laid off.
Wow.
So I must have worked for 5 or 6 different companies.
Wow.
See? But each time I got another job
Good.
because after World War II, they had the Korean War. Defense had to be established. Another big defense buildup. I was working good then. When the Korean War wound down, the Vietnam War started. So everybody was working. I had lots of jobs from the Vietnam War and so forth. Now, when Jimmy Carter became president, he was a Democrat. The first thing the Democrats do is to cut back on defense bill. Okay? So I was laid off. A lot of men were laid off. Ronald Reagan became president. Boom, the defense industry boomed. I got another job. I worked for Grumman. I stayed there until they laid me off.
Wow.
Okay?
Now, how do you think your wartime experiences affected your life?
It made me more disciplined. That's what it did. It taught me I was a reckless kid.
Really?
See? I was on my own most of the time. See, my mother had passed away when I was young. I was a teenager.
Oh.
Yeah. So I did not have the discipline that I had when my mother was home. So my father worked. I was practically on my own. My brothers and sisters were on their own. I had an older sister. She, in a sense, became the house mother. She took care of the house. She did all the cooking and the cleaning. Okay? So I used to just come home, eat, sleep, and run out of the house, play ball, hang out with my buddies, and so forth. I did nothing. I didn't do any cleaning.
Yeah.
My sister did everything. Men were not,
Right,
were not
back
supposed to
then.
do that. Women did all that work.
Right.
That was not for men. We don't do that kind of work, housework. Anyway, I was a reckless kid.
How do you think, were there any life lessons you learned from the military?
Life lessons? Well, aside from being disciplined, I learned the tragedies of war. I saw war. I saw the results of war. I saw the destruction of the war. I saw how people treated other people terribly. How they starved men, how they bayoneted men, how they shot others, the other combatants that they took as prisoner. I learned a lot from them. I learned about how not to be cruel, how to be more responsible, how to be more caring for my fellow man. They taught me that, and taught me a lot of discipline.
Those are really good lessons to learn.
Good lessons to learn. I learned them, and those lessons stick me till this very day. See, I no longer am a carefree man. I always help my wife in the house.
Nice.
I do some of the cooking. I do some of the cleaning.
Excellent. That's great.
I help my wife out. We do all things together.
Together. That's wonderful.
Yes. Do the shopping together, which I never did before.
Nice. How do you think your military service impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
Okay, how it impacted? I feel very strongly about the military. I feel we should have a very strong military presence around the world, given the state of the world today, especially in the Far East with Korea. Okay, I somehow think, even though the Cold War supposedly ended, I don't think it really ever ended. Because even though communism has been on the wane, has ended in Russia, I still call it the Soviet Union. There is a man, Vladimir Putin. He's a very dangerous man. He's the one who invaded. He invaded the Crimea, took it away from the Ukraine. He invaded Georgia. He's building up his military. He's building an outpost now in the North Pole. He's now having military exercises by the Baltic states, which is part of NATO. If he invades the Baltic states, we're in World War III, because we have commitments to all the NATO members. I believe, my belief that Putin will in time invade, and I think it will be shortly.
Well, that's scary. Scary
Yes,
thought.
it's very scary because I think he's very mad because Russia lost the Cold War. Remember, Vladimir Putin was a KGB colonel. The KGB, the dreaded KGB, worse than the Gestapo, Hitler's Gestapo. So I feel that a strong military presence is vitally necessary for the defense of our nation and for the security of our nation. We must have a strong military, and we must keep up with our military. We must have a strong defense establishment. We must have a strong R&D, a research and development program going on in our country to develop new weapon systems. Not because we are an aggressive nation, because we are really a defensive nation. We must defend ourselves. This is not meant to invade other countries. That's not the United States. The United States is not a warlike nation.
Right.
We defend other nations against more powerful and stronger nations, more belligerent nations like Communist China and the Soviet Union.
Korea.
So we have to maintain a strong military presence, and I am glad that Donald Trump became president because he understands that. He understands the need for strong military presence in America.
Good answer. What message would you like to leave for future generations who will hear this interview?
Say it again.
What message would you like to leave for future generations that might watch your interview here?
What message would I like to leave? The message I would like to leave for future generations is to learn the lessons from previous generations, that we must stay strong, we must be well educated, we must recognize the problems that the belligerent world is giving to the rest of the world. We have to learn the lessons of the war. We have to learn to build a peace, a lasting peace. We have to learn how to get along with other nations. We have to maintain a strong military presence. We have to warn other nations that are belligerent to tell them you cannot do what you have been doing in the past. Okay, because you're only going to bring on more wars. And be belligerent, be well educated, be informed as to what is going on in the world so that you can be better prepared. If you're uninformed, you cannot be prepared. So learn the lessons of the past. Do not forget the lessons of the past, because then you'll be repeating the lessons of the past.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Henry. Anything we haven't discussed you'd like to add that you can remember?
All I'd like to say is I want to thank you, Edna, for this interview.
Very welcome.
And
my honor to
I
do
want to
it.
ask all veterans who will be interviewed, try to remember your past. Don't forget your past. There are a lot of lessons to be learned from the past, and to teach those lessons to your children, your friends, because they're very valuable lessons that you have learned from the past. Okay? That's what I want to bring to you. The lessons you have learned, the experiences you have been, bring them forth to others so that they can learn, that they can be knowledgeable of what you experienced. That's all I can leave you.
Excellent.
Thank you for this interview.
Thank you so much, Henry. Thank you so much for your service and your knowledge and expertise and advice. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. I was pleased to give you my experiences and whatever knowledge I learned.
Thank you.
And God bless America. Keep America strong. Keep the faith with America.
Thank
In
you.
our democracy and our freedom and our liberties. Maintain and fight for it. Fight for our liberties and our freedom if we have to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henry. Okay.
Well, thank you for this interview. I really enjoyed it.
And we enjoyed being together with you. Thank you.
Okay, Edna.
You're tremendous.